Let's take a look at some information and charts on Bancor for Brave New Coin. Bancor is a DEX AMM, one of the earliest, with a staking component and burning component. We've got a lot going on. I'm going to focus on the DEX side of things because ultimately I think that's what moves the needle the most. But they also have IL, impermanent loss protection, on their AMM model. The exchange itself, the swap platform, looks just like every other swap platform, which is good. If you want interoperability, you want to look just like everybody else. It looks like they have limit orders now as well. And the big thing is when people come to Bancor, they automatically know what to do. They're not turned off by any of this stuff because it looks just like everything else. They've even got some metrics here for you telling you if things are bearish or bullish from into the block. It's also a governance component like most DeFi projects, which for most people in general isn't too important, isn't going to move the needle. This is the DEX side of things. It's always a good idea to see where most of the liquidity is, what are the crazy APYs that are available. Most of this stuff you've probably never heard of if you're like me. Liquidity on this stuff is almost always next to nothing if it's high APY. The high liquidity stuff is usually ETH-BTC stablecoins. I don't know why Link for some reason is kind of usually on the higher end for these as well. These are all denominated in BNT, which helps on the IL side of things, the way that's calculated. And ultimately, you want fees to be high if you are part of the AMM, and you want, as a percentage, you want to be a collector of fees. So you want volume to be high. All these things play a role in the payout, obviously. So there are pools as well that are rewarded in BNT to varying degrees. All the same sort of thing that you see anywhere on any DEX. The question for all these DEXs is, why should I use Bancor over Uni, Sushi, Balancer? What's the draw here? Is IL burning enough? Is there a governance component that's going to bring people here? Is there a liquidity incentive that's going to bring people here? I don't know, right? That's what all these DEXs need to figure out as they're competing for liquidity against one another. Maybe they have a specific pair that others do not. Maybe they go multi-chain. Maybe the staking component, like Sushi, is enough to bring people here and stay. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but these are all things to think about. In the past 24 hours, Uni continues to eat this pie of volume, and that's a big problem for the little guys because they're going to be scrapping over less and less volume over time, as most of the liquidity is going to sit on Uniswap, most of the volume is going to sit on Uniswap, most of the fees are going to sit on Uniswap. Unless Uniswap does something catastrophic, they are just the de facto winner right now because of liquidity and volumes. If we look at Bancor specifically in the orange slice here, under 100 million today versus Uniswap's 1.7 billion on the day. Just crazy volumes for a DEX. And then on a weekly basis, Bancor in the lighter blue down here, a smaller slice. And on a monthly basis, in the teal, forest green, whatever this is, down here, you're not going to miss it if it's gone, but it's noticeable when you know it's there, right? The big thing is, for all these DEXs that aren't Uniswap, how are they going to remain relevant? Like I already said, what are they going to do to outcompete everybody else, try to pull volume from Uniswap? I don't know. I mean, maybe they can hope that Uniswap has some failure in some way that turns people off of Uniswap, but otherwise Uni should continue to just dominate in every way. Just eat everyone else's lunch, drink everyone else's milkshake. If we look at the TVL on Bancor, it's at 1.58 billion, kind of flat over the past few months since March. Nothing too bullish or bearish there. Volumes down significantly since mid-May, slowly rising again. Transactions flat, but users, this to me is the most bearish thing. There never were a ton of users here, but this curling down is not what you want to see for any DEX. So maybe this stuff gets routed all together one day, and as these DEXs are competing for trades, fees get lower, and I don't know. I don't know what the end game is here, other than there's Uniswap and then there's everybody else that tries to compete, multi-chain, multi-whatever, multiverse, metaverse, I don't know. One thing you could do to dig deeper is see how the individual pools fare in the impermanent loss stuff. Is Bancor's impermanent loss protection actually worth participating in those pools versus Uniswap versus Sushi? And if we look at annualized revenue on a 30-day rolling basis against market cap, very similar to a PE ratio in the legacy world, Bancor is currently 35, definitely on the higher end, has been rising over the past 3 months, much like everything else. Bancor generally sits on the higher end of things for its market cap, and you want PE ratios to be on the lower end. So in general, a high PE ratio means things are more overvalued, and a low PE ratio means things are undervalued potentially. And you're going to see sushi firmly down here at the bottom most of the time. You know, since I've been looking at this stuff, I haven't ever seen sushi not at the bottom. So that's also important to consider on the specific coin side of things. What is the total market cap versus the revenue? Because if these are, you know, profit generating assets or whatever, you're going to need to look at this sort of thing as well when determining where to position your capital. You know, just one other thing to look at. If we look at the Google trends in the United States, specifically over the past 5 years for Bancor, not a lot of action in general, but that's declined over the past few months even. And I think at one point in time, they kicked US people off the exchange. I can't remember when they did that, but I think as a DEX now, US people are okay with that, with being on the exchange from a regulatory perspective, but maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think they kicked US people off at one point in time. Flipping gears to technicals, looking at the 1-year MA in the green here and the multiple to 5x multiple in the red. Not a ton of data, but in general, green is buy zone, red is sell zone, and it's tapped the green zone twice in the past year and a half and the red zone twice. So it's told you and given you pretty good buy zone, sell zone opportunities when things are overbought, when things are oversold, when things are a DCA in, when things are a DCA out. So currently the upside is somewhere around 20. So potentially 5x from here, right? That's what this is suggesting. We'll see if that actually happens and plays out. But if it does, this would have sniped at the bottom. What the worrisome thing is always for these DeFi tokens is that they just sit below their 1-year MA for a significant period of time. I mean, this was below the 1-year MA for almost 2 years before it finally moved. So there's a lot of opportunity cost that you're eating here by hodling this instead of hodling something else. On the daily cloud, there is an active edge-to-edge trade, very similar to this edge-to-edge here. These can look different and act in different ways. Sometimes it'll hug the Kijun, sometimes it'll hug the cloud, but you don't want to see price lose the Kijun or lose the cloud, meaning go below either of those levels. So this is still active. This still looks like it wants to go to 550 eventually, and you don't want to see it lose 330, basically, is where your stop loss is on this trade currently, and it's coming out of that triple bottom inverted head and shoulders stuff that almost all of DeFi has been bouncing from. This is the 12-hour, which tells you things look pretty good at 380. And this probably ends up crisscrossing. So it's probably going to give you another entry signal in that this will probably cross bearish over the next few days. And then over the next week or two, ideally, stuff after it dips recovers again. You know, there's a mini dip here on probably everything. And then this will go for new highs along with everything else and make its way to 550. That's my roadmap in my head anyway. How I expect things to move over the next couple of weeks. Here's that triple bottom stuff again on the daily with the 5200 cross, VPVR, yearly pivots, and RSI. So a bit of a bear div here on these highs. Daily 200, daily 5200 isn't yet crossed to bullish. So this thing needs some time. Along with everything else, you have trend, reversal, continuation. So we're coming out of the reversal, establishing the new trend, and then the next step would be continuation, potentially. There's potential for ranging stuff mixed into that as well, but if this 5200 can cross bullish for really kind of the third time in Bancor's history, then it's easier to be bullish on that, to say that there's bullish conditions. I see a lot of people poo-pooing EMA crosses or MA crosses. They don't give you necessarily the best entries, but they do help tell you what conditions currently are on the chart. I mean, look at this death cross the entire time, held below the 200 the entire time. The reason I look at this stuff is because I'm backtesting. It's pretty useful. You know, this golden cross didn't give you the bottom, but it gave you a really good buy opportunity to tell you, yeah, conditions are much different than they were anytime previously in Bancor's history. So that's why these crosses are important. It's not that they're going to give you the exact perfect entry to the day. They're just going to help you determine, Are we bullish? Are we bearish? Do we have a bias here? What's going on, right? So that's what I'd watch for over the next week or two. And R3 is also at 550 on the way up, so that's convenient. Resistance confluence, Bancor BTC, not a lot of action going on here. Kind of a crazy chart. Bancor ETH, an even crazier chart. But both of these charts, if you're buying lows on anything, you want a bullish divergence, which I don't think it's there yet. You want to be buying range lows instead of the middle of the range lows. You want to be selling range highs. You want to be waiting on maybe a 5200 cross, buying VPVR levels. You know, it's not quite there for Bancor. I think this thing probably slides lower over time rather than sliding higher. So to me, it's more attractive sub 5,000 sats than it is at 10,000 sats as a buy. Because historically, this thing hasn't held highs for a significant amount of time. It hasn't ever really had a significant bullish trend. And against ETH, you kind of just want to be trading the range, right? Buying the lows, selling the highs, forgetting about it in between, not paying attention to it. This did have a multi-week, multi-month bull div before this thing has started to pop up. 1900 or 0019 is a pretty big level for this pair based on the 200-day moving average and VPVR. So one thing you could do is just buy any of the knives down here, and then you get confirmation once we breach 01 or 0019 with the expectation of 0045 plus as far as the high end of that range, maybe to the R1 at 006. Just kind of spitballing the resistances here on the way up. But if you're a range trader, this is probably what you're looking for. Multi-month bull div with prices sitting at range lows. This could go for lower lows, obviously. This could go to all-time lows, but it's starting to look better and better as a potential risk-reward setup. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management solution where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM, performance, allocation, trades, deposits at the bottom here, all of the yield plays I'm in, and at one point in time, this was holding Bancor, this DeFi portfolio. But the DEX space is a bit crowded, so I kind of have to pick and choose as a percentage where I think capital is best allocated in the portfolio, and Bancor is currently out of the portfolio. But at one point in time, it'll probably make its way back in. So anyway, that's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.